Beyond is Crichton Castle, built in the late 14th century, an ancient seat to the Crichtons and later the Hepburns. But it has earlier associations than the castle you see now. This morning I'm going to take you along the River Tyne and then deep into the heart of Crichton Glen, into that deep natural woodland area, and then we're going to come up behind the castle and I'm going to relate to you some personal stories of my own throughout the years and some of the dark history relating to this castle in Midlothian. Good morning, people. It is early morning and there's no better time to really get out here. What you've just seen is the normal entrance, the public entrance into Crichton Castle, but I wanted to bring you down here, for this is Crichton Valley. This is the River Tyne, just to my right here, and the Tyne Valley here, which Crichton Castle sits majestically on top of, looking over, is a wonderful place. It's a quiet, serene place, full of wildlife, full of the sound of nature. But for me, it's the best view of the castle. Our other great Scottish bard, Sir Walter Scott, walked down here. He wrote about this place. He wrote about Crichton and this valley here and the River Tyne. And he wrote about it in his book Marmion. And it really is a magical place. You are literally stepping back in time, because this is unchanged over the centuries. There are a string of great stories about Crichton Castle stretching over the centuries. It involves Mary, Queen of Scots, the Earl of Bothwell, quite famously. But there are other stories less touched upon, and it stretches back to the early beginnings of this castle and before. And that's what I would like to focus on today. Every glimpse you get of this castle, between each tree, piece of cover, is unique in its own right. And it's absolutely beautiful. It really is. It's such a peaceful place. And they're just coming into view Crichton, which was originally a tower house, and became much expanded by one notable William Crichton, who we will speak about, a notorious character. But it sits beautifully on top of that hill. You really are walking back in time by seeing this. One personal experience many moons ago. Oh goodness me, it must be 30 years ago. But I was out here with my German Shepherd, Cora, and we were away up into the woods, away in the distance there, deep into the heart of the Glen, where I've rarely, if ever, met a soul. Anyway, Cora had flushed this deer out of the woods, and it was an extremely steep embankment, and I picked my way down through the woods, called my dog back, but he was telling me that something was there. And when we got down to the water, down to the Tyne water, this deer was lying on its side, writhing around in the water. Now we are at this point, we are a good mile and a half from where I've parked my car. And I helped the deer out of the water, pulled it out of the water, lay it on its side on the embankment, and it died of shock. Quite a large deer. It died of shock. It had young antlers on it. And so I got it in my head that I'll sling it over my shoulders and I'll carry it back to the car. Which I did. It was rough terrain. You know, it's not like carrying it on a flat road or anything like that. It's rough terrain. So I hoisted this deer onto my shoulders. I've got my dog by my side, and I walked roughly that mile and a half back to the car. Chucked the deer in the boot. Took it down to my friend. His friend was a butcher, and we managed to hang the deer, cut the deer up, and that kept us all going for the next winter, rather than leave it lying on the ground and going to waste. But that was quite a story, and it made me, I was obsessive about Robert the Bruce back then, as I am now, and that was a real experience where I just felt, back in the day, I just felt it was a very raw experience of someone in medieval times who'd somehow purchased a deer or poached the deer and took it away, but that deer was put to good use, and I still have those antlers today in my bookcase at home. Just calling my dog back. Here he comes. Attaboy. Attaboy, Degas. Attaboy. Attaboy. You're running your heart out, aren't you? Good lad. As you can probably tell, we've had quite a bit of rainfall, and this greenery has just flushed through the earth, and it's good to walk at this time because eventually this gets knee-high. In fact, it gets above knee-high, and then it's trackless and it can be tough going, but right now is a perfect time to see Crichton Glen. I've been coming here many years. I've brought all my dogs here, all my generations of dogs, and I've got fond memories of them just running their heart out, resting with me. I've been known to fall asleep here a few times in the meadow. I've camped down here as well, and I've also slept in the castle from time to time. Quite a cold experience. And this is the beautiful Crichton Glen. It really is a place of beauty. A garden tucked away in the middle of Midlothian. And you get just that faint glimmer of Crichton Castle in the distance. Crichton Castle is not that far from Borthwick Castle, and one of the medieval and ancient routes to Borthwick Castle would have been just where my dog is now, straight up that slope there, through the trees. The Borders Railway runs behind us now, but for years before the Borders Railway opened, it was quite a nice place to walk. But that would keep going over to Borthwick Castle, which was built around 1470, and these were neighbouring castles. I often think that the Earl of Bothwell riding over here to make contact with Mary, Queen of Scots, in the castle, but also the countless other people who have come down, travelled this way, spent time in this glen. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? It's such a beautiful place. I love it here. And this is one of my favourite parts, where it really opens out here. When this gorse is in full yellow bloom on a lovely bright day, it really adds to the atmosphere here. Get on. I can remember many years ago, these trees that you see in front of you were much less developed. And it's been lovely to see them come on through the years, but it's quite a climb going behind those trees up onto the high hill, which I won't do today, but it does give you a great vista over the glen and towards the castle. Get on in. Just look at that view. Crichton Castle on the hill beyond. Many of the castles these days that you may go to visit, very few are surrounded by such a natural landscape as this. And apart from it being in a ruinous condition, not much has changed. 500, 600, 700 years ago. I would reckon it's as much as you see it now. These beautiful woods, predominantly of ash tree, are well worth a look. There's no pathway through them, you have to cut your own way. But for me, that's the best part of walking in any natural landscape, is informing your own route. That's where the adventure and the spirit of adventure is. Crichton Castle in its glen has always been a special place to me, and it always will be. Midlothian has some real treasures, real historic gems if you want to take a deep dive and delve into your history. But for me, Crichton sits at the very top of that list. way back in the day. This is also, look, it must be 30 years ago. I got chased by a bull down here. It did have a sign at the gate, but I wandered down into the glen anyway. And of course, when you run from a bull, to take the momentum out of anything, you run zigzag. You run very fast, but you run zigzags. But that was quite an experience. That was scenes of Butch Cassidy in the Sundance Kid movie, when Paul Newman got chased of a bull, came to mind after that experience. But goodness me, was I in a sweat after it. But it's good to stay fit. You never know when you're going to need it. So this is the alternative route from the Glen up towards Crichton Castle and its stables. It's quite a steep climb, but as I say, down in the Glen, when you're walking along the valley floor, for me, that's an absolutely splendid view of the castle that is undisturbed. Ancient footsteps over many centuries that have walked up and down this slope here. As we near the top here, you'll just see the castle come into view. And the view of where we've just been and came from. Isn't that something? Another reason why the view is best from the bottom is for many years this castle has supposed to have been going through work, restoration. I have seen little of that. All I have seen is terrace fencing surrounding it, and it really doesn't make for a good scene at all. In my opinion, it defaces the entire building. But I haven't really seen any ongoing work. Maybe I've been unlucky, but I do come here 3 or 4 days of the week quite regularly throughout the years, and I've seen very little progress. So these are the old stables. And it's a fantastic building. It really is. Said to be designed in a Moorish architectural way, but it's beautiful in here. Now, I don't currently have a drone, but I can climb high, and here you get a much better view than close up with the terrace fencing. You can see the upper floor there of the stables. Quite a remarkable building actually, and it's just a shame to see this. If there was an end goal and there was light at the end of the tunnel, I would see the point, but this has been this way for a long time, and it spoils the experience for anyone who really wants to savour it. Why isn't the work being done? Is it money? Who knows? You may not see it on the camera, but just in the distance, above the gorse bushes, I can just make out the roof of Borthwick Castle sticking out on the horizon. Well, this has not collapsed in all those hundreds of years. There's certainly no fallen masonry. As much as William Crichton was architecturally ambitious, he was also ambitious in many other ways, politically, to say the least. For it's here, at Crichton Castle, when King James II was on the throne, that William Crichton invited the Douglases. Now the Douglases, it's well thought, were getting well above their station and becoming way too powerful. So they were invited here. And they were invited under a good guise, they were treated well, and then they were taken to Edinburgh Castle, where they were going to dine with King James. King James is 10 years old at this time. The eldest Douglas is 16 years old, and he's with his younger brother. What happens at Edinburgh Castle is the stuff of legend, but it happened. It's very real. While they were dining at the castle, a piper started to play, and a black bull's head was served to the young Earl Douglas, the 16-year-old. In Celtic mythology, the black bull's head meant death. It signified death. And amidst the pleas of the young king to save his new friends, the two Douglas boys were taken outside and they were beheaded. Attaboy, attaboy. Most of what you will read about Crichton Castle is that it was built in the late 14th century, and that's correct. But there had to be some other type of manor house here, or some type of fortification or medieval home, for this is where the young Earl Duncan, at 16 years old, met representatives of King Robert the Bruce, and he came here to Crichton to swear his allegiance and come into King Robert's peace in the year 1315. What you see before you there, just beyond that tree in the distance, is Crichton Collegiate Church. And what you see directly over there, with that tall clump of trees on top of the hill, that is known as Hag Brae. Tradition has it that witches were taken from here and they were taken to Hag Brae, where they were burned opposite a church. Whether there's any truth to that, I do not know, but it's a story that has come down locally throughout the years. Out of all the ancient titles of Scotland, the Earl of Fife is probably the most prominent one. For it is them who had the unchallenged status of crowning Kings of Scots. And Isabel Macduff crowned King Robert the Bruce. She paid dearly for it. But her successor, the young Earl Duncan, who was only around 16 years old at this time, he was brought up under English control. But when he was 16, in the year 1315, he made this momentous decision to renegade from English control I've no doubt he was very well treated because he was such an important noble. But he made the decision to come to Scotland and declare his allegiance to King Robert the Bruce. Now this was quite a move. No Scottish king could really substantiate his claim with any real merit unless he'd been crowned by the Earl of Fife. I'm just watching my footing here. So it was paramount importance that they placed the crown on the king's head. It gave him the ultimate recognition. And for the young Earl to do that, I mean, the war was far from over when Robert the Bruce won at Bannockburn. There was still a long way to go. So for him to do that as early as 1315 says something about him. And he did it not under duress. He came here to Crichton. He met Robert the Bruce representatives. It doesn't say who they were. And he swore his allegiance to the Bruce. Politically, this substantiates Robert the Bruce as King of Scots. And if he didn't produce an heir, the young Earl, the right would go to Robert the Bruce to bestow that accolade on whomever he saw fit. So Crichton has some ancient associations long before this present castle was built. I will give you another personal story that happened many moons ago. That hill over there, that green hill, I was sitting on there with my dog back in the day, my German Shepherd, Cora again, that's the dog with the deer story. And I saw this guy just down here, just a little bit further along. And I was watching him. He was on his own. And what he did, he took something out of a bag. It was a rope. And he threw the rope up over the branch of this tree. And I watched him for a little while, and he went away. He took himself off. After he'd gone, I went down to have a look, and it was a noose. Quite a thing. I lived in a local farm at the time. I called the police. They came up to my house, and I brought them here to where it happened because they would never have found it on their own. But it was just down here somewhere. Anyway, there's a funny side to the story because it was extremely wet weather. Can't remember what season it was in, but one of the police girls, there was two police girls and a guy, and they went because it was on a slope, they went sliding up and down this bank, and then they got their uniform. They got their uniform absolutely clarty, and it was quite funny to see. But they took the rope down and took it away, and that was that. That's the story. But it was a strange thing to see, and it was also once we went back there, it was quite something to witness with that happening to the police. So there's been many stories over the years here with me in Crichton Glen. Get on. I come here often, so there was nothing like that was ever repeated, or I never found anything else at that spot after that. So I suppose it had a happy ending in that respect. It's a wonderful woodland here. It really is. I often think of those Douglas boys. Their only crime is that they were Douglases. But the Douglases had a notorious reputation for power, and they used that power. And William Crichton took it upon himself. But under the guise of friendship, he invited them here. And little did they know when they took them to Edinburgh Castle that they were entering a web of evil, wicked deceit. And to display a black bull's head in such a symbolic way and take them outside and execute them is one of the blackest, saddest stories in Scottish history. The Douglases did not forget it. They came here, they attacked the castle and they damaged it. But William Crichtoun would repair that castle, and it is as much as you see it now in its ruined state. So when you come here, when you look at this beautiful, serene spot and this lovely castle perched up high in the hill above the River Tyne, think about that history. Think about those poor boys. And think about the minds of those who occupied this place. This castle does have a couple of ghost stories. One ghost story tells of a horseman riding along here up to the ancient door of the castle through the old entrance, which is now bricked up in stone. And people say it is none other than William Crichtoun. Another ghost story has an earlier Crichtoun who on the anniversary of his death is seen leaving the stables and walking up to the castle. I think the true stories are much more macabre. Those poor boys, their only crime being Douglases, who had a fiery reputation and a very powerful one, who paid with their young lives. How were they to know that that night, in audience with the young king, that powerful, evil, wicked nobles would do such a thing and take their lives? It's a story that would go down in black legend of Scottish history. It's been a morning very well spent, so I do thank you for coming on this trip with me, walking in the footsteps with me. If you've liked this film, please like, comment, share, hype, subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and it helps me bring you more content. I don't do this for likes and subscribers. I do it because I love it. But the more people it reaches and the more people that care about it, the more it goes towards protecting what we have left of our history. And that's worth it. Have a great day, folks.